guys, it's Emily, and today I'm here to bring you part 2 of my November wrap-up. I have 3 books to show you today. 2 are nonfiction November reads, and they're both about the White House, or elements of the White House, and then one's a fiction book that I read for Tome Topple. So let's just get into it. The first book I'm going to mention that I read in the latter part of November is Front Row at the White House by Helen Thomas. Helen Thomas was a reporter at the White House for a very long time. She started with President John F. Kennedy in the 1960s, and then she went through part of Barack Obama's first term, and then she retired. So it was a long time, and she was the first woman to be a reporter at the White House press room, and it's pretty interesting because she sort of talks about how they never really assigned her there. She just sort of started showing up to follow President Kennedy around when he was the newly elected nominee, or he had just been elected like before inauguration, and she showed up at his house and started following him around, and eventually they were like, okay, you can be part of his press group. So this is a very interesting biography about her time as a reporter. It's not a chronological memoir. It's broken up into like themes. So she has a chapter on like all the White House press secretaries, and then all of the presidents, and then all of the first ladies, and her interactions with all of those individuals. And then there's a chapter on riding in Air Force One and all the stories and things that she discovered on Air Force One. And then there's a chapter about going to Camp David, and then there's a chapter about like following the candidates around on the election, like when they're campaigning. So it's a very diverse book, and it covers a lot of different aspects of being a White House reporter. There is some talk of her personal life. She mentions her husband, who was a fellow White House reporter, and they actually got married when she was in her 50s, so she was single for a very long time. And then she has one brief chapter about growing up in Detroit and how her parents were immigrants from Lebanon, and they, gave her some great values about hard work and, loving America. And so it's all about her experience as a going from being the daughter of immigrants, a first-generation American, first-generation born an American, and then, achieving this fame and having so much influence in terms of like really press and what her paper wrote about and things like that. So it's a very fascinating book if you're interested in journalism or White House, inner White House circle sort of things, or politics. I love all of those things, so this book was right up my alley. And I also like strong women breaking barriers. That's one of my themes of my reading that I always enjoy. So yeah, I would definitely check this out if you're interested in any of the above. It was a great read, and it just told you a lot about what the inner sanctum of the White House is like. The next book I read was and this was for my new prompt for nonfiction November. This was the newest book that I just bought in late September, so I chose that for the new prompt, and it was good, and I'm glad I read it. So then I read Carrera Evil by Robert Galbraith, which is the third book in the Cormoran Strike series, and this, of course, is written by J.K. Rowling. This is a sequel. I'm not going to tell you that much about it, but it starts out with Robin Ellicott, who is Cormoran Strike's assistant/partner. She receives a leg in the mail, like a human leg that's been cut off a person, and so it's all about how they are trying to find the murderer, and there's 3 suspects that they follow, and then one of them ends up being the murderer. This book, I actually was spoiled. I found out who the murderer was because I read reviews, and there was somebody that wasn't, couldn't put spoilers. But anyway, I actually enjoyed not having to guess at the murderer, because this book is sort of set up where you get a paragraph from the murderer's perspective, and then you get a paragraph from, or a chapter from the murderer's perspective, and then, other chapters. And so I like knowing that. There was one section where I felt like it was really obvious who the murderer was, and I don't know if that's because I already knew it or not, but they show you a scene from Robin's perspective, and then immediately they show you the scene from the murderer's perspective, and you're like, that's kind of obvious, because they tell you which suspect was who she was interacting with in that scene, and then they show you the murderer. It's like, you just gave away who the murderer was. Anyway, I really enjoyed this book. It's a great addition to the series. If you like murder mysteries, I would pick this up. I do want to warn you, these books are kind of grisly, so if you don't like, details of the murder, you probably would not like this book, because they do go into detail on how the murderer got involved with the victim, and then he actually murders several people in the course of the book. And so there's several mentions of how he, does stuff to the victims. I also want to say that there is some interaction with people who want to be amputees, and there's a specific name that they talk about in the book, and I've forgotten what it is, but basically there's people that want to be amputees, that want to get a limb cut off, and in the course of investigating this murder, they come in contact with some of these people. So I just wanted to warn you if that squeaks you a bit, because it was kind of weird, because you're like, what the heck is wrong with these people? Why would you want your perfectly good limb cut off? But whatever. But yeah, this was a great book if you're looking for a good murder mystery. I read this for Tom Topple. It didn't technically count because it has 492 pages, but it was still a great read. And it's been on my TBR for a while, and I wanted to get it read in 2016, so I figured I'd better read it during Tom Topple. The last book I picked up because the Helen Thomas book got me really interested in reading some more about the White House. And so I had this on my shelf since January, and I never picked it up. And this is First Ladies by Margaret Truman. This is sort of like a group biography of all the First Ladies, and I enjoyed it. It's probably not the best book about First Ladies that I've ever read. I did enjoy the fact that she talked about some lesser known First Ladies. So she gave you the spiel about Hillary and, all the modern First Ladies, Barbara Bush, Rosalind Carter, Nancy Reagan, and then Jacqueline Kennedy, and, Abigail Adams, people you would expect to be in a First Lady book. But then she also talked about people like Ellen Wilson, who was Woodrow Wilson's first wife, and she actually had a project where she was cleaning up the slums of Washington, D.C., and then she also worked for more equality in federal offices for Black Americans, and she worked on desegregation, and this was in the 1914, 1950 time, so it was really early, and it was very fascinating. You never really hear about Ellen Wilson. You always hear about Edith Wilson, who was the second wife, who was the one that sort of ran the country when Woodrow Wilson had a stroke. And then there was also mention of Florence Harding, who is lesser known, and then Nellie Taft, and some other First Ladies that you don't get much knowledge about in most First Lady books. Margaret Truman is the daughter of Harry Truman, who was the president, and so she did live in the White House when she was a teenager. And so there were some very odd times when she would insert herself into the narrative, and it was kind of jarring, and it didn't really go with the rest of the chapter, and so that was kind of bothersome. I feel like if she wanted to mention herself, she should have just written her own memoir of her time in the White House. So that was kind of disappointing. And this book was written in 1994, so it is a bit dated. It ends with Hillary being the First Lady, and so that's kind of interesting. She talked about how she Margaret Truman talks about how she feels like Hillary Clinton is a new type of first lady and, is going to go on and do great things in the political sphere. And as we know, Hillary Clinton did do some more political activity after she left the White House. And she also talks a lot about Hillary Clinton's health care plan, which is interesting in light of, Obamacare and now the whole uproar about Trump possibly getting rid of Obamacare. So that was kind of interesting. So yeah, I would recommend this if you're interested in First Ladies, but like I said, it's probably not like the greatest book about First Ladies there is. I know Kate Brower Anderson has a book about First Ladies. I'll enter the cover here, and I haven't read that, but I do want to read that next year, maybe in the summer once, so I can have a longer space between this book and that book. But I'm really interested in reading that. I have 10 books left to read for my goal of reading 100 books. I am planning to read the rest of the Chronicles of Narnia, and then I have a couple of Christmas books that I want to get to. So I'm pretty confident I will get to 100 books by December 31st. I hope everyone had a great November and a great Thanksgiving if you celebrate that. And I will be back with a video soon. Have a great weekend, y'all, and I'll talk to y'all later. Bye!